Hi, this is Boris. Welcome to Movie Messenger. Today I'm revisiting the movie Van Helsing from 2004. It felt so good watching this movie again because I have so many good memories attached to it. I remember I was in high school in India and we went to see it in theatre with a big group of friends. We must have been 15 people. What was funny is that most English movies that come out in my town, which is Pondicherry, they were dubbed in the Tamil language, which is my mother tongue, and needless to say, it was funny hearing Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale. If you know Tamil and you watch Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale talk in Tamil, you know what I mean. But generally, yeah, in India, English movies are dubbed in the local language. I will tell you when we get to the spoilers, in case you haven't watched this movie, but for the moment, let's just pretend that you have not seen this movie. Van Helsing is written and directed by Sommers. As I was graduating high school, I remember slowly paying attention to actors' names, directors' names, building my own IMDb database in my mind. I don't think I was aware who the director was. For those who don't know, Sommers directed the Mummy remake from 1999, starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. I love that film too. Maybe I'll revisit it too someday. This was part of Universal's attempt to bring back the movie monsters. Here are some of the well-known movies from the Universal monster universe, let's say. Dracula from 1931, Frankenstein from 1931 also, The Mummy from 1932, Invisible Man from 1933, The Wolfman from 1941, Phantom of the Opera from 1943, and Creature from the Black Lagoon from 1954. Now in 2018, I think they dropped the ball after the second Mummy reboot. They wanted to do what any company is trying to do nowadays, which is to make money like Marvel movies. They even called it the Dark Universe, and the beginning of the movie Mummy, which came out I think last year with Tom Cruise, they even showed a logo for it. Anyway, let's get back to the film. The movie stars Hugh Jackman as Van Helsing, Kate Beckinsale as Anna Valerius, and Richard Roxburgh as Dracula, to name the main cast. Speaking of casting, I noticed that one of Dracula's brides is played by Elena Anaya, whom I discovered as an actress in Pedro Almodóvar's La piel que habito, The Skin I Live in English, from 2011. For a more recent reference, she plays Dr. Poison in Wonder Woman. If you're looking for a movie to watch which is entertaining, fun, and most of all, the movie is self-aware of what it's doing. The movie is very comic booky, if that makes any sense. We talked about this in our video podcast about Blade of the Immortal. I like the fact that the characters stay in their costume as if they're going to make action figures out of them. Or maybe they did. I don't know. Also, they don't really have the time or need to change their clothes. Something that I think they could have explored more, but which I think was not as popular back then is the steampunk aspect of it. There is even a Netflix series called Van Helsing, which I need to check out, but it looks like this movie inspired it. So maybe, I don't know, I haven't watched that yet. Kate Beckinsale is so gorgeous. I had a huge crush on her, and I still do. Hugh Jackman always does a great job. I don't care which movie he's in. Even in Wolverine Origins, his performance is solid. I have to say the CGI didn't age well. In most scenes they're good, but sometimes they're awful. I can understand and accept this quality in a TV show. I still can't believe that after Jurassic Park, some big budget movies have such awful CGI. And if I remember correctly, this was a summer movie. I noticed this in terms of the quality of the CGI in most Universal movies. Actually, I was planning on doing a video/podcast on Wolfman, which I consider a great movie, and for me is an underrated movie. And then I remembered Van Helsing. I started watching it, and it was so fun that I dove into the details of this world. I thought Hollywood actors' dubbed version speaking an Indian language was funny until I watched the movie again and noticed, especially those living in Transylvania in the movie, they were trying to do an Eastern European accent. I mean, if there's any person listening from, if there are any listening from Czech Republic or Slovakia or even Romania,
Please let me know how you feel about their accent. Don't get me wrong, it's one of the sexiest accents, but it's just, I just want to know, like, because you never get the reaction from the source, and it's really rare to get reaction from the source. Before I go into details, here are interesting information about the world of vampires and werewolves. First, I always wondered this myself. Where was Transylvania? In short, Transylvania is now a region in Romania. It used to be part of Hungary in the 11th to 16th centuries. It was autonomous within the Ottoman Empire from 16th to 17th century, and finally it became part of Romania in the first half of the 20th century. You can look it up on Google Maps. Now a little bit about the character and myth of Van Helsing. He was a fictional character created in the novel Dracula. He's the vampire's archenemy. Here in the movie he is changed to Gabriel Van Helsing instead of Abraham Van Helsing. I will tell you more about this in the spoiler section. The word Dracula apparently is a translation from the words Drac-ula. I don't know how it's pronounced, but it's in Gaelic, which literally means bad blood. Of course, Count Dracula is a fictional character, but it seems Bram Stoker, the author of the novel, was inspired by ancient folklore from Romania and from an historical figure called Vlad Dracula, aka Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler, the ruler of Wallachia from 1456 to 1462. He was born in 1431. In the movie, Dracula says he was born in 1422 and murdered on 1462, and his full name is Vladislaus Dracula. Okay, spoiler alert. Playtime is over. You need to be bitten to go further on from this point. See what I did there? Okay. I was going to recount the story, but I have so many things to cover, so I'll do a short summary of the story and I'll try to cover as much as possible. Van Helsing, the notorious monster hunter, is sent to Transylvania to help Anna, played by Kate Beckinsale, to defeat Dracula. He also accepts the deal because he's a man looking to figure out his past. He has forgotten and has terrible nightmares about them. He hopes to find answers there, in Transylvania. Once they get there, they realize that Frankenstein's monster is the key for Dracula and his brides to bring their offspring to live and keep them alive. On the way to bring Frankenstein's monster to Rome for protection, they get attacked and Van Helsing gets bitten by Anna's brother, who became a werewolf in the beginning of the movie. At the end, they change the plan and decide that Van Helsing can kill Dracula by transforming into a werewolf. Dracula and Van Helsing fight at the end. Van Helsing bites Dracula as he and his children die, in quotes. His children in quotes. They are creatures, actually. Anna, who got the cure for the curse of the werewolf, gets killed by Van Helsing when she tries to inject the cure into him. Van Helsing realizes that now that they have killed Dracula, Anna can go to heaven as per a pact made by her ancestor. He accepts her death and rides to the sunset with his sidekick, Carl. Now I skipped a lot of things because maybe you would want to revisit it yourself again for the fun of it. I like the prologue, the sequence in the beginning in black and white. The lighting, the camera angles made it look like the old Universal monster movies. I love the design of the film, the overall design, the long leather coat Undertaker look for Van Helsing, the gadgets, especially the semi-automatic crossbow or whatever it is called, the design of the monster, especially the werewolves, Dracula when he transforms into the Brad creature. I like the fact that Van Helsing's past was unknown, and it is revealed at the end that the Gabriel Van Helsing is the one who killed Dracula and took his ring. Gabriel actually refers to as in Archangel, the messenger of God. In the movie, he's even called the left hand of God. The ring, which has the same insignia as on the piece of paper he gets in Vatican in the beginning, is a missing piece to open the portal to Dracula's castle. I like the fact that they tried to connect the story between the monsters, except when they said that Dracula needs somehow he has to somehow use Frankenstein's monster as a receiver, I don't know, like to give power to his children. That was a stretch, but okay. Anyway, that's how they wanted to bring all the monsters together. It works actually. Another problem were the brides. I mean, they were sexy, but they were stalling and talking too much instead of killing the main characters. Even Anna says it at the end when she kills one of the brides. I just wish she had a better line when she killed her. When she stabs one of the brides, she uses a silver stake. But does silver kill vampires? I know it's like discussing about superhero powers when they are work of fiction. So, I don't know, I was thinking, how did she kill the bride? But then I remember in the beginning of the film, she said she will stab through her heart if she had one. And also, I guess, in the vampire movies like Van Helsing, I think he used like a wooden stake to pierce through vampires' hearts to kill them. So I guess, yeah, if you stab them through the heart, you can kill them. At first I couldn't find any significant underlying meanings in the movie, but I have something to say about monsters of each era, and in a way comment on why the Universal's attempt to reboot the monster movies have failed. Of course, there's no formula to make a good horror movie, fortunately, otherwise the movies will be very limited in range. But one thing is pretty clear: successful horror movies have always, in a way, reflected the fears that people have in that particular period of time, and the opposite is also true. The truly frightening horror movies are the ones which are so relevant they question our own existence. Like when people talk about the invasion of the body snatchers as the reaction to the fear of communism in US. Of course, that fear is almost non-existent at the moment. I thought about this. Is it really true? I mean, usually yes. Besides, the studios select the movies which are more or less relevant to the current moment, right? Which is why I think the Universal monster movies as they are not successful with the new audience unless there is an interesting take on it. Take the example of what John Landis did with American Werewolf in London. I mean, werewolf is, as a myth, is like dates from like so many years ago that we don't even know where it comes from, but he took that idea and then he just applied it to that generation, and I mean, even if you watch the movie now, it's still really interesting and really relevant. Or I mean, either like you have to take the Universal monster movies and then have a different take on it which is relevant to the current generation, or you have to create a new creature, like in It Follows. So, me personally, I love old movies and I love their charm, but try to explain to someone who is born in smartphones era how groundbreaking Blade Runner was, right? I mean, it's really interesting that what is really interesting for you will not really necessarily be interesting for the next generation or the previous generation. This also made me think about another thing, which is, do all movies age well? I mean, are there any movies which are considered timeless? On the top of my head, I can think of The Matrix, the first one, but still, I mean, because of The Matrix, I can still watch it and learn something new every time. But again, when I say The Matrix, that's just me or my generation, because I'm born in 86, so I'm from I'm an 80s and 90s kid, right? So, like, I don't know what impact The Matrix will have to a teenager now. Like, if he looks at it, will he really realize how groundbreaking it was? I mean, Matrix was actually the first movie, I think, which sort of showed me that movies can be much more than what they actually show on the screen. Like, you know, there's always another layer to the film. I think this is a bit of a stretch, but I understand it's hard to keep the mood of the old movies while trying to appeal to a new audience. La La Land sort of succeeded, but then it becomes about what the movie represents rather than the movie itself. Now, let's look at the idea behind the monsters featured in the movie. For Count Dracula, who sucks blood, I see that as the fear of rich people who suck money out of the poor. For werewolves, they might represent the animal within humans, our animal side. I have a little bit of theory. I have watched a documentary that said that serial killers kill on full moon nights. They seem to feel restless. I don't know if this is a weird sort of placebo resulting from my interest in serial killers, but I do have a certain energy when it's full moon night. I believe the word lunatic comes from that. Luna in Spanish, for example, means moon. So yeah, I might be a lunatic. But anyway, yeah, so I just thought that connection maybe something has to do with werewolves, that like people change into werewolves when there is a full moon. For Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, of course, who we see in the beginning of the film, it might be the bright side and the dark side of the psyche in a human being. And for Frankenstein's monster, of course, what humans, like it represents what humans would do to play God, right? And the risk they saw at the time when the novel was written, they saw like the risk they saw in electricity, the technology at the time, just like some of us fear artificial intelligence now. Now, the audience are very smart. Back then, the only place you could watch a movie was on TV and movie theaters, right? Now people can watch movies everywhere, so they are more familiar with the movie tropes. One of the examples of movie tropes, among many, I noticed are the characters, right? So, as I told you, as I mentioned before, Stephen Sommers, who directed this movie Van Helsing, has also directed The Mummy from 1999, the Mummy reboot. And he has taken the same kind of movie characters for this movie. This can apply, of course, to a lot of movies, but since we are talking about Universal monster movies, here is a comparison of the characters in The Mummy from 1999 and the Van Helsing from 2004. So, for those listening, of course, I will say, so for example, when it comes to the heroine, right, or the damsel in distress, from Van Helsing, of course, is Kate Beckinsale as Anna, and in Mummy is Rachel Weisz as Evelyn. Of course, the very competent hero, the badass hero, is Hugh Jackman as Van Helsing, and Brendan Fraser as Rick. For the comic relief, the guy who helps the good guy, David Venom as Carl in Van Helsing, and John Hannah as Jonathan in Mummy. And the guy who helps the bad guy, who's also kind of the comic relief, but on the evil side, let's say. It's funny because it's Kevin J. O'Connor as Igor, and Kevin J. O'Connor as Benny in Mummy. It's actually strange, but he has a really thick, I think, prosthetic makeup, and so yeah, Kevin J. O'Connor plays the same kind of character in this one, and as he did in the Mummy, and I thought that was a little bit interesting to see the similarity there. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying that people have seen it so many times it won't work for the new audience. I grew up on this. If done right, and if it's really funny and it brings me back to a time where I used to watch all summer blockbusters in cinema, that's great. But so in my opinion, Universal has to somehow be loyal to the portrayal of the monsters and at the same time make them relevant, and it's possible, and understand why they wanted to do what Marvel did, because basically Marvel characters that they are using in the movies are created in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, right? Like, so because Marvel comic book characters were adapted for the modern era, but I am a DC fanboy, so I am biased, and I can't comment anymore on Marvel movies. Like if they have to sort of update the monster concepts to the new generation, or they have to come up with new monsters which sort of remind you of the old monsters, I guess. Of course, I classified Anna, the character played by Kate Beckinsale, as a damsel in distress, but not really. She does save the hero at the end. I applaud the ending because it is unexpected and different from most summer action blockbuster movies at the time. She dies at the end, saving Van Helsing from the curse of the werewolf, and that doesn't happen a lot. Like usually, like for example, when I was making the comparison between the Mummy and Van Helsing, In Mummy, you see a typical ending from the 80s and 90s movies, right? Like, 90s, and late 90s movies, which is the hero saves the day, and the hero and the female protagonist, they kiss, and usually that's where the movie ends. So yeah, I thought this was really a good, like a bold choice. I love this movie, and I recommend. Especially if you want to watch something close to a horror movie with monsters and stuff, because these monsters, the point is, the reason I think I love the fact that they have to still use these monsters actually in a way, even though they have to find a way to make them relevant. These monsters still capture people's imaginations, just like the superheroes do. Like, Batman was invented. Was created in 1939, right? Or 1940. I'm sorry, I'm confusing with Superman. Superman was created in 1939, but and they are they are still relevant. And even if I'm after I'm dead, they will still be Batman stories. They will still be werewolf stories. They will still be vampire stories. So yeah, I think. This is like I said, if you want to watch something close to a horror movie with monsters and stuff, but not too scary to give you nightmares, I think this is a really great movie. And finally, if I'm not mistaken, another thing I noticed is that this might be one of the last movies to use matte painting, because I assume nowadays CGI does the trick. Finally, there's a cool shot of the werewolf standing behind the roof on fire and jumping over the fire. It looks like a comic book splash page. And I'm going to end it here because if you let me go, I'll talk on for hours about this movie. I thought first I would have nothing to say about this movie because it's just a action-adventure movie, like a summer blockbuster. It's based on myths of werewolves and vampires. But I have to say, it was a really entertaining movie, and you never get bored, and there are some great action sequences. The great action sequences which I didn't have time to talk about. But speaking of comic books, you can read my monthly webcomic series on Webtoon. So the webcomic series is called Tech, T-E-C-H. For free. It's on webtoon.com or Webtoon the application. Webtoon, that's WEBTOON. And follow me on Instagram. I'm really active there. I post my cartoons, my illustrations, and so on, my thoughts. And it's at Sketchman_Boris. So Sketchman like SKETCHMAN. _ Boris, BORIS. Thank you for watching and listening. If you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. The next movie I plan to do is Wolfman. Yes, I am staying in the monster universe. So until next time, this is Boris, Movie Messenger, signing off.